Well, hello. Welcome to this intimate, lovely conversation with me, Nicole Lynn from Facilitating Love on Earth, and Vivian Winterhoff from Joy and Movement. It's an honor to just talk with you, Vivian, and have you here and learn a little bit more about what led you on the journey that you're on and your passion and creativity and ultimately joy and movement.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Nicole. Thank you. Yes, it's a joy and honor to be here with you.
Yeah. I was reading your bio on the about section on your website, Joy and Movement. And you have a wealth of information there. But one thing that I found really interesting about these dots that are connected is the name Joy and Movement, and how you are pretty much a world traveler. You have been moving, so to speak, for like your whole life. So I kind of want to begin there. Like, tell us a little bit about the places where you've lived and you traveled and what that was like, to kind of start to develop home inside yourself instead of always an external place out there.
Wow, that's a really powerful question. It's interesting because that's come onto my radar recently through someone else I've met who's a belonging coach and who helps women find their home within themselves. Women who have traveled a lot and live in a foreign country or a different city. And so it's kind of a fresh question for me because I haven't really ever thought about it so hard or deeply. But yeah, I was born right here where we are now, and we're both here in the Littleton area in New Hampshire. And I was born in Littleton. And my grandparents lived here at the time, but my parents didn't. So it wasn't actually the place where I grew up. And we were living in the Philippines at the time. And I really remember very little of that. I was very young. And when I was 2, we moved to Germany. When I was 16, I moved to Australia to go to boarding school, which was an old family. Basically, my mom's generation went to boarding school to this school. And it was kind of a question that wasn't really, I don't know, it was just something that we did. In Germany, you often go on exchange in year 10 of your schooling. You go to often English-speaking countries to learn the language better. And for us, Australia was just the place because we are part Australian to get to know that home country, that heritage. And my grandmother on my mother's side, who lived here as well, is Australian or was Australian. So, I mean, I can go even further back, like on my grandparents' side, how much they traveled and lived in India and Thailand. And it goes way back in generations as well, the traveling. And then finally, I missed Europe so much. I missed my family. I missed my sister, who was very little at the time, 10 years younger than me. And I just missed growing up with them. So I decided that was important to me. So I moved back to Europe when I graduated. And I ended up going to university in London. And then I kind of made my life there for about 12 years. But then there was a tug that was, we're getting really, really strong. And it was saying, this is not the life for you. And so I lived in Devon for about 1.5 years doing a master's to change my career path and tap into my love of nature and to see what I could do with that. And so that eventually led me here. And I came here without a plan. I knew I loved it from my childhood. I loved the forests and the mountains here. And I lived in my grandparents' house, who have passed away, but the house is still in the family. So I was able to be there, very fortunate, for 2 months while finding my feet. And so I've been here ever since.
And have you been here 6 years, Vivian? 7?
Almost 6, yes, almost 6 years. Yeah. So I got here in 2016. What was interesting is that I left England just as Brexit was happening. And as a German citizen, I used to be able to just live in England. But after Brexit, that's not so guaranteed anymore. And I actually was going to apply for British citizenship because I would have been eligible for that. But because I was moving away, I didn't want to pretend I was still living in the UK and maybe get caught out lying. So I don't know. It's just, it's interesting, this question of home within oneself. I've never actually felt 100% part of where I have lived. There's always been something different about me, whether it's my accent or something cultural. When I moved to Australia, nobody got my sense of humor. And it felt very alienating because people would take me literally when I was being sarcastic and it just felt like no one understood me for at least initially. And so that's just an example of how there's always been something that's not been where I haven't quite fit in. And I'm just reflecting on, I think home for me is just, I don't know, honestly, it's finding also people who are part of my community that I just love being with. It's kind of, and I know I can find those. I can find them if I want to. It's staying connected with family. And then I'm still exploring what it means to be home within myself. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm reminded that you got your master's in ecological design and you were really passionate and started to again, connect these dots about how our living spaces and our environment externally does have an impact on our emotions and even probably our mental constructs and even beliefs, all in our physiology as well. Could you talk a little bit about your master thesis and what that is, maybe even define it, and then share what you've been finding since it's connecting with that piece again called home?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was a big challenge writing that thing. But the journey was really interesting. And I was basically out in nature a lot. There were some beautiful woodlands on the doorstep of the college, a beautiful old estate as well. That was this that has a river running around it. You could walk through the woods to the river, and it was a very emotional time in my life because I was changing a lot of things. And I just needed a lot of support, a lot of introspection, and a lot of figuring out, what's going on, where am I going in my life? And I found that I was kind of living my dream, being in a community where, people were gardening and just really coming together and sharing really interesting ideas and all of that. And as part of that, I also moved to a little cabin, which was really close to the college where I was studying, which had like a wood stove, and there was a scent in the air that reminded me of my grandparents' place here in New Hampshire in that place. And it was just really cute. It had the cutest little kitchen. And I mean, I think the whole journey was just all so interwoven with all these sensory experiences of the woods, of being in the gardens, of having interesting conversations with people too. So there was the intellectual input, but also the social and the connection that I had with people. And then, so I started to really pay attention to my senses and how powerful they were, and also how powerful wood was for me as a connector to the world, not only in trees and forests, but also in terms of how we use wood and how it's our paper, how it's our, if you have a wood stove, and how comforting that was for me to have a wood stove, and our furniture, and how beautiful it can be made into something beautiful. And wow, I'm getting a bit lost.
It feels beautiful and perfect how you're using, and this is what you do, you bring in your senses and bring in the sensory awareness, and you do get lost in that space. And in some ways we get teleported back, and when you're remembering, you're feeling so deeply everything, and you're letting us feel that too. So it's a real treat.
Remembering, yes. There was a lot of craft as well, part of that world. Not that I practiced it, but I was very much exposed to it, handcraft. And
like basket weaving, or like what kind of crafts?
Yeah, and people building like little structures or and like that, like what I still love is the beautiful wood carvings or beautiful wooden bowls, and just a lot of awareness of working with the land and drawing from the land, not only inspiration but also the materials. And then my dissertation was about how if we approach how we live from a more bioregional perspective, where we really allow ourselves to ground in one place and really start to get to know that place, that we can use the materials from that place in a respectful way and in a beautiful way too. And it just leads to what I called an enlivened economy, which other people have written much more about than I have, but an economy that is slower, that not only takes from nature, but also gives back to nature, and that is essentially more joyful.
There's your joyful joy and
Yes.
movement.
Yes.
Just hearing you talk, is there anything that's showing up around home when we connect, not really feeling it like you belonged in any one place, and traveling so much, and also feeling misunderstood and grieving, feeling the loss of family and missing your sister? But then you mentioned kind of grieving again. You were going through a pretty big change in your life when
Yes.
you went to the university. But slowly, through community and nature and your sensory awareness, you started forming this really intimate connection with the landscape and the people. And it feels like even yourself. And not only would it be healing the grief, of course, but slowly, like I love how you shared the wood stove smelled like your grandparents here in New Hampshire. And it's like these little breadcrumbs where all these things which you don't even know why you're there or what's really happening. You think you're signing up for a program, or you're going to do this or do that, but life has this mysterious way of saying, and so much more, or it's going to take twists and turns along the way. Yeah. But you're here in 2022, you've been here 6 years. You're back at the place where you were birthed, and the place where the scent of the wood stove reminded you.
Mm-hmm. That was very strong. Yes.
Like I have goosebumps feeling like this whole journey of you of traveling and being very cultured and loving culture, and not really feeling like you're one thing, because really we're not. And we are a collaboration of the people and the love and the hardships and the world that we've connected to and formed relationships with along the way. So here's this cultured woman, and in some way there was grief and loss and trying to find her place in this big old world. But you were guided, and now you're back here. Just like rooting into this moment and this time and space, and in your journey and what it's been like for you to get here. Is there anything that's coming up that you want to share? I'm really feeling like this theme around home.
I do remember when I first came here just now that I said it felt like home, like coming here.
So can you describe what that feels like? To bring kind of what you do by opening up all of your sensory awareness. So what is home to Vivian in this moment, right?
It's a settledness. Yeah, it's like, okay, this is, I can handle this place. It's not the right words, but it's like I can handle the beautiful and the terrible at the same time. Like, I mean, even just talking in weather terms, like the long winters here, but then you have the spring and where we are now, which is just, you just drive around, walk around, and it's just exploding with beauty. It does it in winter too, but we're not in that space right now. We're like, we're done with winter for a little while. But it's kind of like you don't want to be anywhere else, geographically speaking. I would say for me, it's like, where else would I be in this moment if I had, and I do have the choice to move. I don't know where I would move to.
Yeah.
And I used to have an idea of where I would move to. It was somewhere else. It wasn't necessarily a specific place, but it was somewhere else other than where I was.
Oh, yeah. And what does that feel like in the body, to feel like it's not here, it's not now, it's somewhere else?
Yeah.
It's the very opposite of that settled feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of, fluttering here and a lot of like, okay, where is that other place? And you're never quite present.
Landed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say also for me, I'm hoping I'll still be able to travel to the places I have lived and have formed a connection with as well. I mean, for example, Australia, I haven't been back to since I left, and that was in 2002. But the smell of the eucalyptus on a wet summer's day, when it's rained, and the fragrance of it, there's just so much, like, from different pockets of the world that I'll come across even throughout one day, like just moving through the space here. And suddenly a little memory will pop in and be like, especially through smell. Oh, that reminds me of, my grandparents' place in Germany, or that reminds me of, Australia, and or this gray day is like in England, and the rain and there's something in the air, that makes you want to have a cup of tea and get cozy. And so I feel like there's parts of me in different places in the world, and in a sense, it's almost like I'm people say global citizen, but like, you are a being of the earth. So, yeah. And we each form our own connections with different places. That's what it feels like. It's like this multi-dimensional space that also works across time. Like there's no linearity. It's just popping in all the time, taking you back there and taking you forward there. And yeah.
There's so much I could say about this. You're making me feel that, like this antenna, like receiver, and how for so much of our life, and I know a lot of people still right now are doing that kind of search and chasing, and they don't feel like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're where they're supposed to be, or life isn't they're not where they're supposed to be in their life or career or relationships or health or whatever. And that kind of panic energy that you were describing when you just kind of felt like, unsettled. And then when you mentioned coming here and this, like, okay, where else would I want to be? Geographically, like you said, like, sure, there's people we miss, there's parts of the culture, but there's still this space of like, and yet it's okay. Like, this feels like home. I'm settled. And how so much of our life we're chasing something, and grief is a part of that. And we are searching, and we have longings, and we don't feel like we're home, and we don't feel like we belong. And there's all this energy around that. And part of that, I think, is necessary, when we branch away as children from our parents, and we have to find ourselves in what does life mean to me, and what do I want to do, and how do I feel? So a lot of that's purposeful, but only to come back and be the place of your birth, full circle,
Mm.
And yet holding the wisdom and the connections of every place you've ever been that led you back to the full circle moment, and being that receiver where you know whether you're smelling eucalyptus in your home or the smell of fire, campfire or something, or wood stove, or like you said, even like the fog or the mist, or just how everything is here now when we allow ourselves to open our sensory awareness and connect. And even let's go there a little bit, because I'm curious. So you lead your clients through somatics, somatic experiencing, and even force bathing, and we'll get to all that. But a lot of it is connecting with here now, not only what's in the environment right now, not necessarily imaginary, and also your internal landscape in the here and now. But isn't it also interesting that we just talked about how what really is imagined
Yes.
versus real, and that in this moment, even in your home, when you can be deeply aware of what's in your home, you're still connected to grandparents in Germany and Australia, and all these different things, and yet it's all here.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's anything you want to share about that, but and if you would even recommend, like, would you recommend someone starting with what we call the present moment, here now, like what you can taste, smell, touch in the physical, before you expand and open more into memory, or past, or future? Or is there really, like, what would you share with your life experience around this topic?
Never been asked that question before. I think it really depends on the person, honestly. And like the way that I have been taught and the way that I like to facilitate the somatics explorations is by opening up to the moment. And it can be a really courageous thing to do, just to be here and to notice what's happening in the body. You'll be guided to whatever you need in that moment. And it's not about trying not to go somewhere or trying to go somewhere. And so I think when a person is ready to go and revisit a memory, they will. And if not, they won't. They'll explore something different. Something different will come up.
How important is it to kind of anchor in and be present in the here and now in order to expand and be present with all there is, like from that personal perspective to the global?
Is that a question to me?
Yeah, I'm just prompting any responses. Yeah. It's almost like we become the anchor, and we become still and present, and we start to open and feel and remember, and then naturally things just keep expanding and growing until there's almost no boundaries. We can be anywhere and everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah, the boundaries, that came up for me just now. Like, okay, everyone has their own kind of sense of boundaries. Something else I wanted to share on that, but it's now escaped me. Let's see if it comes to me. Hang on. Yes, it's like this morning I was feeling a little disoriented, and I was feeling, checking in with myself. I was like, why do I feel kind of, I think it came from overwhelm, but I'm not quite sure. It doesn't really matter where it came from. The answer I got to this feeling of not being, like, just being kind of, I don't even have words for it. It's kind of just a feeling. Like there is so much that you want to get done, or so much that you want to do, and you just don't know where to start, and you don't really have the energy for it. There's no capacity there. And it almost, when I get into that kind of space, I just kind of like, I almost start to cry. Sometimes I do. Mm-hmm. But ultimately what I knew to do, which worked for me, was to take care of my space, to clean up from breakfast, to, water the plants, to take care of myself, like to clean my teeth, and from there things started shifting. And so I guess that it's that coming back to oneself. It's like, it's that starting with yourself that's important, to then be able to, once you're that anchor that you mentioned, once you're anchored, once you're fully here, then it's possible to open up safely and open up those boundaries that maybe we have imposed ourselves, not good or bad. And, they might be protective. But before we can really be within and take and honor ourselves and take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to take on other, whether it's to help or to receive something from someone else, or the world and the grief in the world and everything that's happening in the world, the beauty even in the world.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I love how you acknowledge that taking care of yourself isn't necessarily just like, yourself. It's also the space in which yourself dwells in.
Yeah.
And so I love that you created a little nest or a bubble around you, your home, and you started to take care of the dishes and the food, and you started to take care of these other little entities, right? Living forms that exist that we engage with all the time and probably take for granted. But you were like, here, let me wash you, and here, let me do this, and let me put you away, and let me, you're loving, nurturing your environment and all of these other little beings, only to now be like, okay. And then you brushed your teeth, like, I'm going to take care of me. And it's just kind of rippled. Mm-hmm. And kept getting larger. And now here we are sharing this conversation with who knows how many people, mm-hmm. from who knows all over the world. But
yeah. Mm-hmm. And in that space, before I started doing all that, I was almost about to call you and say, Nicole, I'm not in the space for this. I'm going to start bawling my eyes out. I'm not going to be able to come from any place of wisdom in this kind of energy.
That's a question I actually wrote to ask you. Because the joy in movement, again, when I think about, like, we'll get to why you chose that for a name or why it chose you, but
chose me.
Movement, we can have, we talk a lot about different things. And one of the things we've been talking about for a while is that feeling of enoughness. Mm-hmm. And so often we think about, I'm not enough, or I'm not doing enough, but there's also like, enough is enough. Yes. Boundary, right? Like you talked about. Well, movement, yes, movement is life, and we need movement, and things are always in motion, but we can have too much, and it can become that overwhelming. And then we're not anchored and grounded. And then we don't know where to start because everything is piling up, and it can mm-hmm. paralyze us. Mm-hmm. We know a lot about that with people who deal with perfectionism. There's mm-hmm. a real thing where you would think perfectionism is someone who's always doing. It's like, well, actually the stagnation part of perfectionism is huge.
Yes.
They paralyze themselves before they can even get going.
Yes, I know that one.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about this, like too much versus too little, and how we do find that balance and start to become aware of finding those controls, like, ooh, of movement.
Mm-hmm. There's so much there. Yeah. The moving. It reminds me of something someone I know once said, that wobbling is part of balance. So I'm not sure. I might not, if I would be answering your question or really sticking to the point here, but what came up for me is just when we can get in a space where there's a lot, it feels like too much. It feels like there's a lot. We have to come back to, I think, to, okay, what can I control in this moment? Like what little thing can I do to, I don't have to deal with all those things like right now. I can't possibly. So what is it that I can do next? Even if it's a small thing that can contribute, or whether it's to someone outside of you or to your own things that you need to do, including your own self-care. I don't know. It's hard to answer that right now.
It's perfect. It's what you did. It's what you called yourself to do when you started to feel that overwhelm this morning. You're like, what do I have control over? Well, I can clean my breakfast, my space.
Yeah.
And you started to slowly start to not feel that overwhelm so much, but you created more space for peace as well.
Yes.
The polarity, when we're tunnel vision and hyper focused on the overwhelm, there's no peace.
Yes.
But when you simplify and you slow down, and then you start to tackle these little things that you have control over one at a time, you're tending to the overwhelm, tending to your needs in the space, and opening to balance the polarity of, there's some things out of my control, there's a lot of things in the unknown, there's a lot that I can be overwhelmed about, and there's also this spaciousness and peace. It's both. How does that correlate? Why don't we go to joy and movement, and how the name chose you, and how you do balance these polarities in your practice and with your clients and ultimately with yourself.
Well, joy was always really important for me. If I had a goal for anyone who is part of my practices and whom I share my offerings with, it would be to find joy. And the movement part is multifaceted. And I think originally, there's one part which I won't dwell on too much, which is that movement is important for our health. And a lot of us, not all of us, but people who have computer-based work, just sit a lot. We sit a lot. We don't move a lot. And when I worked in London, I was sitting at a desk all the time. For most of my life there, I was at a desk. And I started developing problems in my back, and my lower back was always in pain. And when I left London to do my master's, and I came across my mentor in Somatics, Roz, I realized I was so tired from that life. And not only that, but my physical body was really misaligned. She doesn't do manual adjustments, but through the somatic practice, which involved movement and which involved also gentle, very slow movement, I started to sense my body more and sense more where I was not nurturing it. And so that's kind of the movement that I hope people can tune into. And when you start to move, it's like mindful movement. When you start to move more, become more aware. Like now I'm moving my hands like this, for example. I'm aware of how I'm sitting here, and I adjust, and according to my level of comfort, like allowing myself to be more comfortable, because that will radiate if I'm comfortable. If I'm sitting here like this, it's going to make a difference to how I present and what I say. But yeah, coming into that kind of very kind of fine-tuned movement brings a lot of joy, because you start to become more present, and you start to also become aware of how amazing our bodies actually are. So, you know, that's just a snippet of what the name is saying to me, is talking to me about.
Yeah.
It's funny because I do think, because of the direction I have gone in since founding my business, you know, part of it was also going to be more active, like eccentric stretch, like, you know, almost like a Tai Chi kind of practice as well. But I know I haven't gotten into that yet. I'm still interested in it. It's just you can only do one thing at a time. But since starting my business, I've been thinking, like, when people see joy in movement, what do they think? Like, they probably don't expect me to be guiding meditations. And so, like, is there a mismatch there? For me, there isn't, but I do have to explain what it means, contrary to what a lot of people will probably be thinking.
Yeah.
So.
It almost feels like we've went full circle again, because I can feel this connection with you, the creator, you know, or the one that the vessel in which this creation is coming through uniquely through you. You know, you have been a world traveler. There's been a lot of movement.
Yes.
And without even you realizing that you were going in this new direction after you created 12 years, a career, a life in London, to then leave all that and get your master's in ecological, is it called ecological design?
It's ecological design thinking.
Thinking, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that instantly, you know, makes you become aware and slowly finding your joy, because you started to connect with people and you felt held and safe in a nurturing and loving space. And how sometimes the joy in movement is very subtle. You know, we as a culture, a lot of times we think of joy as this ecstatic joy, and sometimes it is, but it's also can be really like peaceful, almost not even noticeable to external, you know, observation. And that's similar to movement. Movement can be extreme and loud and boisterous and crazy, and it can be very, very, like right now, every cell, every organ, every molecule, everything is all that there is movement.
Yes. Yeah.
Even when we're feeling like we're sitting still.
Yes.
And when we sit still, we become aware of more and more of those subtle realms.
Yes.
So that's that polarity piece again too. It's like when we're really active, sometimes we are not aware of the subtle realm because we're very active, and so our awareness is caught up in like the running or the dancing or whatever.
I was watching Qigong documentary last night or the night before last, and in it they were talking about how feeling, if you become attuned enough, you know, you can feel, I mean, anyone can actually, especially after exercise, but you can feel like the blood running through your fingers. You can start to feel things like a life force in your body, which is the chi. And I was like, that's what somatics is about. Like you're feeling the life force that makes you, that feeds you, and that brings that joy.
How does that connect with belonging and home?
Oh, I don't know.
Because you just said the life force energy that feeds you and nurtures you, that's within you. That the life force energy is how we are able to be alive. It's the creator of life.
Yeah.
Inward and external, outward. And so that belonging becomes that oneness of unification, like,
yeah. I can
You
be
should
home
hear that.
anywhere in that space. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
And we can be everywhere because
Mm-hmm.
the molecules and particles, like our thought waves and our emotion waves and everything, they are connected. So you can be in Germany and you can be in London and
Oh,
Australia.
yes. And how many times do you think of someone and then they call you or they email you, or yeah, even if they're continents away.
Mm.
Yes.
One thing you talked about is alignment and
Yes.
feeling more aligned. And I love how, you talked about back problems and stuff. And so, yeah, there's physical alignment, and that's a real thing. And you were mentioning your mentor, Roz, and how she doesn't physically manipulate the body like chiropractic work or even massage, but slowly through becoming aware and guiding yourself into these movements and observations, you do correct in a lot of ways the physical alignment with your spine and your body and your positions, and you become aware of how you're holding your body and engaging with your environment through your body.
Mm-hmm.
But the alignment with like that life force energy, alignment with your purpose, alignment with your soul, alignment with your needs and like, so your mental, your emotional, your physical, even if we think of our energetic or spiritual elements, the alignment connects to so much more than just even the physical. Someone might go into this because they need help physically or emotionally or even mentally because they have too much overwhelm and they're constantly thinking, only to find this alignment and how, it's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I needed the physical alignment,
Mm-hmm.
and I did, but whoa, I needed to find myself so much more.
Yes. Yes. I mean, how is it when you start your day without starting from a place of alignment? You're drawn in all directions. You're like, I don't know, like this, like, oh, and this, and this, and this, and this. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, let's stop for a moment. Let's find what is my energy right now, and move from that. What is needed right now? What do I need right now? That's, for me, that's aligning with what's happening here, what's coming out of me too, what needs to happen.
And that's your work, that, and maybe this is a good segue, but I've taken a couple months of your weekly classes and then have taken some more sporadic ones since then. But what I find working with you is that's what you do, is you help people find their alignment and whatever that is going to mean or look like for them in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they need to be held in grief. Maybe they need to find what home means or belonging. Maybe they're experiencing a lot of physical discomfort in their body. Maybe there's and maybe they'll find eventually where it all connects, but slowly this awareness and being held in the safe container, you keep guiding people back to align with yourself here and now. And eventually the goal would be probably, like the name says, joy and movement. And it's not even joy and movement necessarily externally, because that's kind of where maybe the mind goes, right? Like we think of dance or swimming or skipping or running, like things that people love to do through movement, and they find joy in that.
Yeah.
But I almost want to say how you work, Vivian, is you create the safe container in some of the suggestions for the explorations to have the alignment, only to, through your process over and over again, realize that you are joy and movement.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's simply also because we're alive. That's what life is.
There's that life force energy again.
Like one of my teachers I mean, I've studied her, and she's informed the practices of my mentor and some other work that I'm following in sensory awareness. Charlotte Selva, I think, said if you're not moving, you're dead. Like, and I think she said it more in the sense of when you're fully relaxed, you're dead. Because her take was like, you can't relax, like there's always going to be tension somewhere because you're alive. You have to have tension. Your muscles are always either contracting, expand, physically speaking.
Oh, I love this because I've been playing with this concept myself. You know how big in our world and our culture, and especially in like the work that you and I do and like self-help, and we're facilitating and helping people to come back to themselves. The theme of letting go is huge. And right now we have the new moon.
Yes.
And so letting go is just this huge thing, right? And we, of course, like we realize how much we acquire and accumulate mentally, emotionally, and physically and energetically and throughout the day. So letting go does have to be a part of our conscious awareness and practice or experience. Yes.
Yes.
And like you were just quoting and sharing about, if you completely let go, then there will be nothing left, because in order to be alive, there has to be holding and contracting and tension. And so that really just like, it makes me ironically let go more, because you realize how you're kind of holding on to letting go.
Yes.
And like this idea that we have to let go, like I have to let go of that, like I have to let go of where I'm supposed to live. I have to let go of what I'm supposed to do. I have to let go of these workshops or what I'm creating, the words. I have to let go of all this stuff, right?
Yes.
And you're holding on to this concept of letting go. But when you realize and you give yourself permission, so for instance, when a baby is born, their first instinct is to hold on, to latch on, to the mother, to the breast, and to a finger, to anything that they can just hold on to. And it's natural. And we slowly start to, through that trust and safety and connection and holding on, and find our place with our feet and our crawling our hands to the earth. We taste a lot of things. We're holding on little by little, and naturally it evolves into I can be safe everywhere or anywhere. But you don't try to jump into letting go to get there, to this unattached space of I'm supposed to be unattached. I'm supposed to not hold on to anything. I'm supposed to be unattached. Where's the safety? Let's form the connection. Let's slow down and feel, because the earth is holding us.
Yes.
Everything is. And that's one. So anyway, it drew me into this place of, let's give ourselves the truthful, it's permission, but also telling the truth, which means we need both. We have letting go, constant things, letting go. The moment's always renewing itself. Our cells are. And we hold on, because that's what we do. We form connections.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all vital for our aliveness and our health and for our safety, so we can naturally keep expanding and feeling comfortable in all situations, highs and lows, ups and downs, darkness and light. Yeah, I know that there was something that stimulated in you when we were talking about holding on and letting go. Is there anything that you want to share from that space?
Well, there was something in what you said earlier I wanted to share, which is tied in, but what came up now immediately was how interesting, isn't it? Like so often, like I don't know much about these traditions, only from what I've heard from other people, but like Buddhism and so on, they talk about detaching, like when you're enlightened, you're completely detached. I've never really quite understood what that meant. I'm like, well, how can they live their lives? How can they have a relationship with someone? I don't, for me, that was always like, how can you, I know maybe this is the human condition. This is how we are made. So why would we deny that attachment? And in what you were saying was kind of like, it's so interesting, that holding on, that letting go, that balance. It's like, just what came up for me was when a loved one dies. What was I trying to get at? It was like, there is that grief, right? And there is that, oh, I wish they were still here. And there is that, I want to be with them. And you're holding on to their presence, their physical presence. Somehow it made sense to me in the moment. It's like by allowing yourself maybe to come into that grief and to be there, you can also then start to let go more, because there's something bigger than that presence. I'm trying to find the words for this feeling that I have, which is like you're kind of simultaneously holding on, but you're able to let go more.
Yes. I know. It's like it comes right back to when things get really overwhelming, you stop and you find your alignment, or you say, what do I have control over? Let me start with the cup from my tea, or let's start with the dish. And slowly it can build. It can build to something much greater. We can have an interview, but maybe not. So there is a letting go, and then coming back, and then holding on to what you can. And then, like I was sharing, just by giving permission and realizing it's normal, that holding on is a part of our human nature. We don't have to always just be in this let go place. You find that, oh, I was able to let go a little bit more. Like, oh, I didn't know I was holding on to letting go. And now it's like, oh, I just relaxed like so much more, because I'm giving myself permission to have that connection and that safety and that support and intimacy and love. So when you think of a grief, losing a loved one, or even like us, we're displaced from our family. We live in New Hampshire. We love it here. It's beautiful, but our family members aren't here. So grief doesn't have to always be in death. And it's like, there can be this, I know I need to let go. I need to let go because they're not here. But then that's going to fill you with even more grief and sadness, because now you just unplugged from the connection that you want to have with them.
Right. But you can still cultivate that connection if you allow yourself to
hold on for a minute, then go, let yourself hold on.
Yeah.
And now they're here. And so are you. And now you can let go.
It's like that. Okay, they're safe now with you. If you don't cultivate that, they never will be. Yeah. And then you can let go.
And it almost happens naturally, it almost happens organically. And like, if we're trying to force anything, that polarity and duality, they kind of just flow to create wholeness naturally. And we just have to be the recipients of it. Like, yes, we hold on. Yes, we let go. Yes, it's all here. Yes, there's overwhelm. Yes, there is grief. And yes, there is peace. And yes, there is intimacy and connection. And you don't know what part of it you're going to be in, especially when you really start to become present and let go. The more you're going to realize all these pieces that you are connected to and holding on to. And you just keep going into the experience. Vivian, in your practice, you talk a lot about touch points.
Yes, I do.
Can you kind of talk about that a little bit? Because I feel like it's connected.
Well, I use it mostly in the contents of touch points with the floor and feeling the ground below you, but feeling that connection with the ground, feeling that connection with the floor. And there's, if you're standing, it's different. If you're sitting, it's different. It might be through the chair. If you're standing, it's through your feet. If you're lying down, those are sort of the three main modes that I would work in. There's all sorts of connection points. And so that's kind of the most exciting, because you're like, well, there's the head, there's the shoulders. I mean, and it might be different for different body shapes, and always also the sacrum and, the pelvis. And still also the legs and the feet. And it's just so beautiful to feel, to really tune into that groundedness, to know that we are held. Always that meditation goes into how, can you allow yourself to be nourished by gravity? Can you allow yourself to let go into the ground, into the soil, into the earth? Is it okay for you right now to just allow yourself to be held? And what's interesting about that too is as you allow more and more, as you release more and more, you start to feel different touch points or different qualities in the existing ones. Maybe one part becomes more prominent, heavier, or it's very interesting exploration, and grounding, and also coming home to the body. Mm-hmm.
And how other parts, when you say other parts get more prominent, other parts seem to even disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And so it reminds me of the baby again. It's like through the feeding, or through the holding, through the touch points and the connection, the child's able to let go and know that my needs are being taken care of. There's nothing I have to do right now. And somehow, and this comes back to that grief and sadness. You recently taught a class about enoughness, and I had the pleasure of attending. It was very profound. And I know you have a couple more classes coming up, so we'll make sure we let people know about that. But, so many people are operating. I mean, we all are. Let's not even say so many, because it's a part of all of our human experience, is at different times feeling like we're not doing enough, or we are not enough. And we can talk about like the touch points, and how much of us are trying to be independent, or trying to do something and force something through this non-attachment, even feel with our earth, right? And our living spaces and our bodies. And we're thinking we can be alive without the help. All we are is being helped. That life force energy outside of you and inside of you, that's all that there is. It's flowing through the trees, it's flowing through the plants, it's flowing through the rocks and the water, and you and me. So if we can let ourselves hold on like that baby that needs nourishment, let me hold on and let me connect and be fed and nourished. And now I can let go more and more and find the joy in movement, the alignment with me and all of life, which again is your ecological design thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's from that place that the full of care, and the healthy, the truly healthy actions come, because they are, at their core, they are respectful. They come from a heart place, a place of love.
Yeah. And sometimes even before they come from a place of love, like, as guiding your clients, sometimes it's, let's just connect with the floor. Let's just connect with our butt touching the chair.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even have to be like, let's not even talk about the woo-woo or emotional stuff. Like, let's just feel your butt connected to the chair, in the chair connecting to your butt. Right? That simple, that factual and actual, tangible. Like,
that's what our physical bodies are here for. That's what they bring us back. We could be, I think, what is it? When a recent meditation, I used something, and one of my members said, "Oh, I love that quote. You need to quote that." It was something about when we come back to connecting with the floor, when we come back to being grounded, we're not floating around up there, whether it's in your head or beyond your head, in this idea space, and the space of overwhelm, or the space of just airiness. You're kind of
disassociation.
Yeah. And yes, to some people it sounds woo or kind of esoteric, but yeah, it's just a simple, if you start to physically become more present, you're going to automatically probably go to that space. But that's where the allowing comes in. And that that was something I wanted to emphasize earlier was, in the alignment, and it's about allowing all of that to happen. And I know we just talked about that, but it's just so important to not allow those thoughts to come in and be like, oh, this is strange, this is weird, this is stupid. Am I really feeling this? Am I, is this? And I know that so well. I mean, and from sessions you and I have had where Nicole has guided me, where you've guided me, I've been like, can I trust this? Like, what, and this questioning mind, if we just check that at the door for a moment, we can always revisit, come back to it later. I say that in my meditation sometime, and just allowing whatever is here to be here, just allowing yourself to be here right now, just as simple as that.
Allowing.
Is it possible for you to do that?
Yes. Allowing ourselves to be nurtured, allowing ourselves to be held, yes. Allowing ourselves to get fed, allowing ourselves to have connection, allowing, and then anything that you thought was outside of you, like the grief of loved ones or a job or financial or health or anything that's just, remember that feeling we talked about earlier, like it's not here now, whatever that is, by allowing and having that connection piece. I'm going to keep saying, the baby being fed, but whatever that is, like connecting to your sits bones on the chair or your feet on the floor, your whole body, whatever. Through that connection, allowing, you will find all sorts of wondrous things. And like you said, it might become a little bit woo-woo at first. You might disbelieve, but now all of a sudden, someone that's been deceased for 10 years might all of a sudden be right there. Mm. And you didn't know how much you were craving or needing to hear from that loved one for so long, and how much you've been holding this ache because it wasn't even conscious. And maybe it was. So other people are like, oh, I really knew and I needed and I missed. Other times it's like, oh my gosh. Mm. Because through that allowing and open, receptive state, because you're held, you're tethered.
Mm-hmm. There's no fear of getting lost somewhere, or yeah.
Ooh, we're on to something that's really profound. And how much in the spiritual practices is it all about letting go to that? Now you're not tethered, and now you are just floating in some kind of space, and you're not connected to your body. So many religions in the past have talked about, you are not your body. You are not. Okay, we can understand where they were getting at. There's truth in that. And we are in a body, and we chose to come here and be in a body. Yes. And let's not deny that. No. And let's actually use that as the tether and the portal in which we can open to all these other realities and time and space continuums.
Yes. Exactly.
And you do this, Vivian. Yeah. You do this. Yeah. And it has taken you, I always say, as you know, that we are always our first clients. We are always our first everything.
I'm my first client for sure.
Oh, we all are. I don't care what you do. If you're a house cleaner, if you're a builder, like it's always like, so often people say, oh no, I do that for a living, and when I come home it's a mess, or I don't want to do that anymore. And it's like, we understand, but that's a misalignment. The more that you begin with you, and then we ripple out and we share with the world what we do, what we engage with, what we're connected to, that tether piece, that is what that flows out. And we show up for the world in all these amazing ways because of who we are.
It's okay to be tethered.
I mean, how much of us needed that permission? It makes me think of the amazing author and storyteller, Michael Mead. And if anybody has never heard of him, he's, oh my gosh, he's in my top, 3 people to tune into in the world. He's just amazing. But I remember him sharing a quote or a poem, and he talked about, I don't know if he could use the word tether, but it reminded me of a tether and being connected to our soul.
Yeah.
Giving ourselves permission to be connected to our essence and our soul, so that wherever we go in the world, and we can anticipate stress and, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. But what would it feel like a baby to the mother? Like, what would it feel like to be tethered to the soul and know wherever I am, I'm going to be okay? Because my soul and my essence is here. I'm deeply connected. It's like my security blanket, right?
Yeah.
You can bring that wherever you are. And in truth, we already are.
Yeah.
We already are connected. But you give yourself that permission to now hold on to something, and you can realize how much more how further you can go, and how brave you can be, because you have that little bit of a support.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like Michael Mead also shares, you take that, because wording is funny, but to somebody, the word soul might connect with them. But then to someone else, it's like, okay, well, how about you stay connected to the earth and hold that tether to the earth? And now wherever you are, you're held and safe from Mother Gaia. And how does your body feel when you allow yourself to hold on to that? Do you relax a little more?
Yeah.
Do you feel a little more brave?
Yeah.
Like a baby learning to crawl, to then walk, to then run, to then school, or then college, or marriage, or travel. It's like, oh, I can do this.
And it's not that you do it alone, because you have the support.
And there's that home and belonging piece.
That what?
There's the home and belonging piece.
Yeah.
Wherever you are.
Yeah. It reminds me of my thesis or dissertation, depending. If you're in the UK, it's dissertation. If you're in the US, it's thesis for my master's, which in it I developed this model. I think a lot of students came up with a spiral, but so I had a conversation spiral, and it was a conversation with place through the material world and through the senses, but also through the thinking mind, also through intuition and imagination, and then also through emotions. But like for me, obviously the senses were like a gateway, and the you would go through the spiral. It doesn't matter necessarily which direction in, but layer by layer, it would sort of like a top, it would, or like a nail almost, although that's kind of not a good metaphor, but it would like go into the ground more and more. And that was the soul, like you're finding your place, and you're getting to know a place too at the same time. And while I was talking more about geographic space in that context of my thesis, it's also very much an internal place. And at the same time, the spiral is becoming is opening up at the top, and that's where you start to open up more to spirit. So it was both esoteric and also very grounded and practical at the same time. So that's what it reminded me of, what you were just saying and talking about coming full circle. I love that. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, Vivian. Okay, let me just look through my notes and see. Gosh, we pretty much talked about everything.
It's 12:12.
Oh, wonderful. I guess I want to ask you about some of your programs and what the offerings that you have, but we'll save that for the end, as well as your website where people can find you. But I have a couple last kind of big questions that you can simplify and share whatever comes to your heart. What is your hope for humanity by bridging this somatic experiencing, joy and movement, ecological design mindset? What is your hope for humanity by offering this gift to the world?
Oh, what a beautiful question. It really comes down to things that frustrate me daily. It's kind of that, how can we be more respectful? How can we be more respectful of one another, of where we live, of our life support system, our ecology? So it's kind of finding our way of living more in tune with who we really are meant to be, like who as humans, like taking our place in our ecological system, our rightful place, and not the lost, disoriented place. That's like a big vision. It's how can we find our way to what really matters most? Yeah. And it starts with ourselves. It's unique. The pathway is going to be unique for each of us.
I can still feel how it's connected to holding on and plugging in to be connected, and even to the belonging, and to the home, that we do belong here.
Yes, we do.
And we are a part of the landscape. We are a part of the whole structure of life forms, the plants, the animals, even the stars, even the planets. And knowing our rightful place through that respect of interconnected communication. Because isn't it funny how often we demand respect externally, but without first saying, well, let's make sure you feel respected. Let's make sure you feel connected. You know, we can't make a crying baby that's detached. They're going to be making a lot of noise. We got to first meet their need, bring them back. You belong. We respect you. Let us support you. And through that, now you know respect, because you know what it feels like. You're plugged in. And that can be easier said than done, right? Because we see people with pollution, or, you know, we see people doing all sorts of stuff, and we don't understand them. We say they don't deserve respect. But maybe it's because we've been so unplugged from our belonging and our nature of being a part of this world and how we do belong, that we haven't learned.
No, we haven't learned.
We haven't felt it within our own somatic experiencing embodiment.
Yeah. In most cases, I wouldn't say it's intentional disrespect or intentional harm, because there is that.
We don't know better.
No, exactly. It's like a
We're
destructive
lost.
ignorance. Yes.
The opposite of belonging, we're lost.
Yeah.
And as a species and as a collective, we really have been lost.
Yes.
And that could be a whole other interview. That could be a whole other conversation about, you know, our heritage and how through colonization and all that, like, we have lost touch with our roots, and we have lost touch with our belonging and our culture. But
yes.
Yeah, so we don't have to assign blame, and we can just come back and say, well, what can I connect with right here, right now, that can make me feel held and safe? And then maybe by doing that, slowly it will evolve into expanding like that spiral.
And it's a practice every day, several times a day.
And knowing you're worthy, there's the worthiness again, and enough, because how often do we not give ourselves the time to relax and plug in and to get fed and nourished?
Yeah.
Because, you know, we think there's more important things or whatever that is going on, and we forget about ourselves again. Wait, let me come back. I mean, get nourished, so then I can ripple out. So in your hope for humanity, I hear respect, and I hear it begins with self-respect. Wow. We kind of talked about this, so I don't know if you just want to keep it there, but I had, what is the biggest problem you think that we face in the world right now?
Yeah, I feel we talked about it. I think there's that what comes with that lack of inner respect, as well as respect for others, other beings, other places. What comes with that, which is something that's been interesting because it's been part of my life, and I still catch myself sometimes thinking that way, is is the blaming and the shaming and of others, but also of oneself, or that guilt. And so, we need to step out of that I feel it's just not a healthy place to live from. It creates so much discord, and it's like a veil that we can't, that hides the essence of what's really happening. So yeah, and it makes me mad. Like I start to, it's almost funny. I'm like, no, don't say that. Don't think that way. Like I've then become the one who's like shaming others. So it's so easy to slip into that. And I think it comes back to like, something that I'm trying to cultivate is that daily, maybe several times a day, that practice, because it's so easy to slip into that kind of space, to bring oneself back to, okay, what is really happening and what is really important right now, and what might really be going on, not necessarily like with someone else, let's say, theorizing about someone you just don't understand, and you just like, oh, I don't understand why they're doing that. But you just don't know. And then it comes back to, okay, so yeah, there's a lot to say on that topic, but
So how does what you offer the world, the somatics and the forest bathing, which we haven't really talked about forest bathing, if you want to share a little bit about what forest bathing is, but how is what you offer to the world helping with this problem that you see that we're all dealing with?
Well, the first thing it really helps with, and forest bathing is just essentially somatics in outdoor spaces for me. But what it also really helps, maybe even before you start with a somatic practice, is because it's easier to listen. It's about listening. It's about opening up space for listening. Because you can't listen when you're rushing through the day, and you can't listen to yourself, and you can't listen to others. And that veil that I was talking about, that is kind of pulverized in a sense. It's kind of through actual, like really proper listening. That's when you start to peel back the layers. So it's a somatics, the way I have experienced it and the way I like to convey it is, it's about creating a space for listening, for a deep listening. And again, it's like everyone's unique in their own way, what they need to listen to or how. And that's what I help people explore. How does your body want to be right now? How are you led to be? Do you want to be curled up in a ball? Do you want to be really active and shake things out? And that's part of the listening process. That's where you start.
And how much do we know through respect? A lot of people don't feel respected because they don't feel listened to, or they don't feel heard.
Yes.
And even Mother Earth, right? Like people who can just throw their trash or do whatever, keep exploiting all of her resources or whatever that is. It can be, are you really listening to her? Are you really listening to the trees or the animals or the plants? Are you really listening? So respect and listening, they go really hand in hand. And I love how you shared the problem you're seeing is a lack of respect, and how your practices and your offerings help with this big global problem is, well, let's begin by listening again and connecting through listening. And maybe eventually, again, we'll get down to the respect piece and being able to get our needs met. Like before we rush into meeting the needs of everybody else, let's be that baby that needs to be fed. Let's plug in. And we'll see what evolves from there, what spirals out. Well, Vivian, it's just been a true pleasure and joy. And you know how much I adore you and the work that you do. And it's so funny when we talk to each other, because it's so easy for another practitioner to be like, the whole world needs you.
Yeah.
The whole world needs what you have to offer.
I say that about you.
And we all share it about each other. And it's true,
Yeah.
because we see it reflected and we know, but at the same time, we know that people are going to find us when they're ready.
Yeah.
And patience is a big piece, and being our first client and knowing the more I just keep anchoring into this and become a living embodiment as myself, the more it will ripple out and touch those that need this as well. You can trust in that spiral, right? But that being said, where can people find you, and what are some of the offerings that you're sharing with the world right now?
Thank you, Nicole. I have a website. It's www.joyinmovement.org, so .org. And there's plenty of information on there. I have the main program that I have at the moment is a virtual program, and it's called the Joyful Breaks membership. And so it's a monthly membership, and it's funny, you say everyone needs it. Well, in business, we're taught to niche down, to like say, no, I work specifically with these people. And so I am actually, at being my first client, I decided it would be almost most effective to attract people, to work with people who themselves are solopreneurs, who work for themselves, who work from home as well, and who find that they need that space to check in with themselves, and they just can't quite cultivate that habit of doing so. And so the program is a program of live meditations. I show up for you like twice a day, except for Wednesdays during the week. And Wednesdays we have a longer, really lovely conscious rest session, as I call it. And the idea is really to just cultivate that space of inner listening in just short bursts during the day. And so for me, what it does, even as me guiding these mini breaks, as I call them, these little meditations, these somatic meditations, I step away from them feeling like everything has settled. And like I have so much more focus and clarity about what I need to do next. And it's like I said, like checking some of those thoughts at the door and just allowing myself to really not even just feel the ground, like to just that, nothing else. And yeah, so anyone can join anytime. And I would love if I had more members to share this practice with and ripple out from there. It would be amazing. And part of my vision of that is supporting what I might call a new economy. So supporting those people who are led by their souls to do the work that they are doing. And I don't want to see people burning out. I don't want to see people coming from an uninspired place. Like for me, it's all about creating that space for inspiration and creativity, and as one says, filling up one's own cup before you can pour it out for the world. And then I have a couple of in-person classes coming up as well here in New Hampshire in Littleton. One's called Boundaries. It's all about exploring when is it safe for me to open up, and when is it not, and just a very gentle somatic exploration of that. So I'll be guiding you through, how it feels in the body to be ready to open up, to be ready to step out into something, and how it might feel to not be quite ready. And the last one is confidence and authenticity. And that is all about how do I step out into the world knowing that I am enough, because the first one was enough and that's already happened, but you can join at any point. How do I step out knowing that I am enough and holding those boundaries that I know I have? They might be fluid, but how can I tune into those, and how can I be confident about communicating those, and really embodying the enoughness and the boundaries and and really being authentic in that, because I'm embodying all of that. And I'll probably make those into a virtual offering too, so that I can reach more people.
Oh, wonderful, Vivian.
Thank you, Nicole.
Oh, thank you. When you say for entrepreneurs, just to clarify, would like a housewife or, would somebody, when they work from home, but in a non-traditional way, someone, even a caregiver, someone who's taking care of their elderly parent or somebody, and if they need to, okay, I need to put the oxygen mask on myself right now, is that also what you are would allow into this?
Oh,
space?
yes.
Okay.
I'm definitely not a gatekeeper. If someone feels called to participate, even if they're not like running their own business, they can come. In fact, and my parents are very loyal, supportive members, and they're retired. And so, it's very open to anyone who feels called to join. Yeah. For some nourishment, for some self-care. Yeah.
And just to clarify, so it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, twice a day. Yeah. And what times are those?
At the moment, it's 8 a.m. Eastern time here in the US, which is around 1 o'clock in the UK. Okay. So I do have some people in Europe as well. And then 12 o'clock Eastern time. So there's a morning, a nice way to start the day. Some people start earlier, I don't. And then a check-in in the middle of the day, just to reset and realign. And also we do on Mondays, I have a guide session. The first session is always about setting the intention or checking what you want to invite into your week. And so we really tune into that and how it feels in the body to invite something that, just one thing, and then see if we can carry on that, inviting that throughout the week. And then on Friday, I do a morning check-in, which, okay, so how did it go? And what's coming up for you? And, are you beating yourself up for not having fulfilled your invitation? Well, then just, that's okay. Like, let's reset again. Like because we have that choice that we can renew ourselves. And so that's, the loose structure. And then on Wednesday, it's at midday when I have the conscious rest session, midday Eastern time, so 12 noon. And that goes for half an hour with a little sharing circle at the end for anyone who wants to share any aha moments, anything with the community as well. Yes.
Oh, I love it. And so you offer so much, Vivian, and you just are a wealth of information. And like you even shared, your website alone has so much rich material. But how much is the membership right now for 5 days a week?
Yeah, it's $35 a month.
Wonderful. Yeah. So it's so generous, and you get so much. And if people can't, I know a lot of it's about being accountable. So having them live, you have to show up.
Yes.
But if people miss a few, how do you approach that?
Yes. Thanks for asking that. Yes, I record just about every session that I can, and then I place it on the membership platform. So you get a login and you get access to past recordings as well, or replays. There's a whole library of them, probably way too many for anyone to listen into, but there's certain themes. Every week has a theme. Most weeks have a theme. And so if you want to listen to a replay, you can even, if you want to tune more into, I don't know, your feet. Like sometimes we focus just on the feet and gratitude for our feet and feeling our feet. And then you can tune into one of those replays. Sometimes we explore what it is like to move like water, for example, and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Oh, I just love what you do and how much you offer for the world. So yes, for anybody, like if you can be there physically, of course, you're going to have the physical community aspect of showing up in person, the accountability that's going to take your spiral to a whole new level. But if you can't, don't beat yourself up, and it's okay. And know that there's plenty of recordings, and you can do this at your own time and speed as well. So
exactly.
And if you are in the Sugar Hill, Franconia, Littleton, Bethlehem, I mean, if you're in this kind of area, Vivian's 2 face-to-face workshops that are an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And when is the boundaries? What's the date
That's
for that
on
one?
June 9th, Thursday,
Okay.
June 9th at 6:30
Yep.
in the evening. Yeah.
Yes. So of course, I mean, that's because that takes it to a
Littleton.
whole new level. When you can be there physically, live with you, face to face, be in the presence. It's like going to a yoga class or going, you're just held in the sacred container and community. And I mean, of course, that's my favorite if at all possible.
Yeah.
But so much of our life has been having to be on, through the screen and virtual. But so for anyone local, that's a real treasure and a treat. And again, like super affordable and wonderful. What are the prices of those two workshops?
It's $25 if you're coming to one session.
Yeah.
And then if you're coming to the next two, which the other one's also on a Thursday evening at 6:30 on June 30th, I believe, then it would be $40. So it's a $5 saving per session.
Oh, nice. So you can pay for both together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's wonderful.
Anyway, I have details on that. They're called the Somatic Explorations. I have that on the website, and you can sign up to.
Why is it the Amanuensis? People who aren't
Because
local.
it's the river, right? So it's the river that runs through here from the top of Mount Washington, which is the tallest mountain here in the East Coast, which we live basically in the foothills of, Nicole and I. And it runs through the town of Littleton, which is the town I was born into, but the yoga studio where I'm holding these workshops faces that river in an old, beautiful wooden, I think it used to be a shoe factory actually, building. And with the last session we had the windows open, and we got to listen to the white noise of the river flowing by. It was a magical space. Yeah. And I am going to, when I post this, or when you post this, put a link down below where people can sign up for a free guide that I'm offering. It's called 6 Steps to Self-Care for Solopreneurs.
Wow.
Very simple 6 steps, very practical steps that I use every day myself. And when you sign up there, you get a free membership month for Joyful Break. So you get to try it out for free as well, because I'd like to make it as available as possible to people to try and see if it works for them.
I love you. I adore you. I see you and I feel you. And I am so grateful to be connected to you in this time and space. And thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you show up for every single day. Through your own accountability and anchoring in this consciousness and this respect, knowing that we are deserving of it, and it really is where we begin so that we can make a difference in the world. I can't say enough. It's to have people with so much integrity and genuine authenticity and honesty, and to our work is not your work and then you go home and become a completely different person. That's like the old paradigm of what people thought jobs were and work or careers. But for people like you and I, it's a lifestyle. It's embedded in everything that we do, every place that we go. It's who we are. And whether we get paid for it or whether we have a client or not, we're going to be doing it because we can't not. And I just
like, where else would I be? Well, what else would I be doing?
Exactly. Here I am. This is me.
I'm doing this.
I belong.
Yeah. Yes. It's beautiful. It's taken me a long time to get to this place.
And yet also not, because well, who knows? Who knows how long we've all been at it anyway, right? But
where does it begin?
Yeah. But still, I mean, there's people of all ages, there's young teenagers and people in their 20s that are finding this, and there's people in their 80s, and it's just all perfect. You're never too late.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you. I loved your questions and your beautiful insights as always. So rich and nourishing. What a treasure. Thank you.